This is a true story that happened to me in 2005. When I was living in Missoula, Montana, I was only 10 years old at the time, and I had a little sister who was 7. We shared a bed in our small bedroom, which had a window that faced the backyard. The window was at the ground level, so anyone could look inside if they wanted to. Next to the window, there was a wooden deck that led to the upper floor of the house, where the kitchen and the living room were. It was a cold and snowy night in late February, and we had invited my best friend over for a sleepover. We were having a blast, playing games, telling jokes, and giggling like crazy. As we were getting ready to sleep, I looked out the window and saw something that caught my eye. It was a deer standing on the deck, looking at the house. I pointed it out to my sister and my friend, and we all thought it was cool and cute. We wondered what it was doing there, and we decided to name it Bambi. We didn't pay much attention to it, and we soon fell asleep. I woke up in the middle of the night, feeling thirsty. I reached for the glass of water on the nightstand, and I glanced out the window again. The deer was still there, but something was different. There were 2 green lights on its head, like glowing eyes. I rubbed my own eyes, thinking I was dreaming, but they were still there. I felt a chill run down my spine, and I nudged my sister and my friend, whispering to them to look at the deer. They woke up and saw the same thing I did. We were all scared and confused, and we wondered what those lights were. And then the deer moved, and it was not a deer at all. It was a man wearing a deer mask and a dark suit. He was holding something in his hand, something that looked like a gun. He was facing the kitchen window, and he seemed to be trying to break in. We watched him in horror as he moved closer to the window, and then he turned his head and looked right at us. He saw us, and he smiled. A wicked, twisted smile that made my blood run cold. He started walking towards our window, slowly and deliberately, like a predator. He reached the bottom of the deck stairs, and he stopped. He was only a few feet away from our window, and we could see his face clearly. He had a scar on his cheek and a tattoo on his neck. He had a look of pure evil in his eyes, and he raised his gun and pointed it at us. We screamed as loud as we could, and he pulled the trigger. But nothing happened. The gun was empty or jammed or broken. He cursed and threw the gun away. He reached for something else in his pocket, maybe a knife or a hammer or a rope. We didn't wait to find out. We jumped out of the bed and ran to the door. We opened it and ran to the hallway, where we saw our dad holding his shotgun. He heard our screams, and he came to check on us. He saw the man outside our window, and he aimed his shotgun at him. He fired, and the man fell to the ground, bleeding. He was still alive, but he was not moving. My dad called the cops, and they arrived in minutes. They arrested the man and took him away. They also took us to the hospital to make sure we were okay. We were physically fine, but we were emotionally traumatized. We had just escaped death by a hair, but that was not the end of our nightmare. It was only the beginning. You see, there was something that we didn't know at the time, something that our parents didn't tell us because they'd wanted to protect us, something that made our encounter even more terrifying. Around that time, there was a serial killer and a child molester on the loose who had been terrorizing the area for months. He had killed several people and kidnapped several children, and he was wanted by the FBI. He was a master of disguise, and he used different masks and costumes to lure his victims. He also used night vision goggles to see in the dark. He was very smart and very dangerous. His name was Joseph E. Duncan Inouye, and he was the man who was outside our window that night. He was the man who tried to kill us, and who knows what else. He was the man who almost became our worst nightmare. We found out about this later, when we saw his face on the news. He had been caught after he committed another horrific crime. He had broken into a house in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and killed a family of 4 with a hammer. He had also kidnapped 2 children, a boy and a girl who were siblings. He had taken them to a remote cabin in the woods, where he tortured and raped them for weeks. He had killed the boy and buried him in a shallow grave. He had kept the girl alive as his sex slave. He had planned to kill her too, but he made a mistake. He took her to a Denny's, where a waitress recognized them from the news. She called the cops, and they rescued the girl and arrested Duncan. He confessed to his crimes, and he was sentenced to death. He is still on death row, as far as I know. He tried to kill himself several times, but he failed. He is still alive, but he is not living. He is suffering every day for what he did, and he deserves it. He is a monster, and he should rot in hell. That was the scariest thing that ever happened to me, and I still have nightmares about it sometimes. I can't imagine what those poor children went through, and I wish I could have done something to help them. I hope they are in a better place now, and I hope they are at peace. I hope they know that we are sorry and that we care. They are the real heroes, and they are the real victims. We were lucky, we survived, but we will never forget. We will never forget that night, and we will never forget him. He is the reason why we are so paranoid and cautious now. We always check the locks, we always look out the windows, and we always carry a weapon with us. We don't trust anyone, and we don't take any chances. We don't want to ever meet him or anyone like him again. He is the reason why we say, let's not meet. I hope you liked my version of your story, and I hope I made it more scary and mysterious and longer. If you did, please let me know, and I will be happy to help you with more requests.